A few days later, seeing the finished cabin in front of her, Janica then became very happy. She did not expect the spirits to be able to build it so quickly, but, besides that, the spirits themselves looked very exhausted at this time. They could only lie limply on the ground after finally finishing their work. Janica then became worried when she saw that. She had told them not to exert themselves. Hearing that, when Mug was about to tell her about the deadline that Tarkhan gave them, but he suddenly undid his intention for that, they could now finally feel relieved and could leave peacefully. He also invited Janica to enjoy her new camp life. Mug said that it was enough for them, that was their only hope. After that, with a peaceful face, Mug and other spirits then returned to the spirit world. Seeing that, Janica then thanked them all for their hard work, even though she knew that they were just pulled back. But somehow it felt a little touching when she saw it. Before entering and checking her new cabin, Janica then wrote something on the ground to start her new life. Cohabiting. The writing seemed to be a form of her hope for the future. She was very happy to finally be able to live together with Ed, but, hearing Ed's cabin door suddenly open and the sound of footsteps slowly sounding, she was then surprised. With a hesitant tone, Janica then called Ed, but, contrary to her expectations, what came out was not Ed, but Lucy. Lucy seemed to have just woken up and was about to enjoy the morning sun. Lucy also seemed to be quite surprised when she saw her and the writing she wrote, while Janica herself was certainly surprised to see her suddenly come out of Ed's cabin, reading the writing Janica wrote on the ground. Lucy then grinned. She felt very proud at this moment, because she was not only living together with Ed but also sharing the same bed with him. After Ed got the book Principles of Celestial Magic written by Glock, he immediately learned it, which made him open a new category in the system, Basic Celestial Magic, but because he had just started, his proficiency in that category was still very low. He couldn't even cast Basic Celestial Magic at the moment. Looking at the shapeless flow of mana in Ed's hand, Marilda then realized that he failed again. From the looks of it, she felt like it was very difficult to control. She then asked him if he could understand the mana flow. Ed said that he didn't know either, he just had to try it. Hearing the two of them who had been discussing about celestial magic, Lucy, who had been sleeping on his lap, suddenly said at this time, "Celestial magic is all about understanding the core principles. Magic is a field where both theory and intuition must coexist. If I keep practicing, I'll get the hang of it." After saying that, Lucy then immediately practiced it. She manipulated her mana, and made the equipment there suddenly float in the air. Hearing her words just now, Ed asked, "It sounds like you've been practicing quite a lot yourself." Lucy confirmed it. She did it for some time. But, Lucy was then surprised and blushed when Ed suddenly put his hand on her head, while Ed himself did not notice her reaction. Seeing that Lucy had mastered celestial magic even though she had only practiced a few times, Ed was not too surprised. He felt it was natural for a genius like her. Putting that aside, Ed didn't expect that Glock actually wrote the book Principles of Celestial Magic. In the game, he actually thought that this magic could not be learned at all. Celestial magic allows the user to freely manipulate time, space, and mind. When it comes to pure power, this is the strongest magic, but because celestial magic is capable of twisting and bending the laws of reality, it is the most complex magic of all. With little research available, leaving aside its danger, it's just incredibly difficult to comprehend. Lucy probably learned it instinctively, so he couldn't bother her to teach him, because it was a completely different thing. Thinking about that, Ed then could only wish that if Professor Glast was still around, it would definitely help him a lot. But, as Ed thought about that, he suddenly recalled Professor Glast's face and his last smile at his death. He could only wish if he was still alive. But, when Ed was dizzy thinking about it, he was then surprised when he heard someone shouting. The person shouted no and asked him not to add another girl. Hearing that, Ed and Marilda then confusedly looked towards the person. The person seemed to be very surprised when he saw a beautiful girl beside Ed. He even dropped something he was carrying. That person was Zix. With a worried face, Zix continued, "No matter how great a man's ambitions are, at this rate, I really have no idea what kind of hellscape awaits." Hearing that, Ed immediately knew that he had misunderstood. He then immediately cancelled Marilda's summoning, which made her figure slowly disappear. Seeing that, Marilda then frantically told him to wait a minute. She was in the middle of the most exciting part of the story, but Ed didn't care about that. Realizing that he had misunderstood, Zix then immediately apologized to him. he now also realized that the beautiful girl turned out to be the spirit he had met that time. He felt guilty for jumping to conclusions. Ed didn't really mind that. He then asked him what he needed to come here, while pointing to something he was carrying. Zix said that this was an old magic book that was about to be discarded that he had asked for. Hearing that, Ed asked him to convey his thanks to Aika. He said that he wanted to refresh his basic magic knowledge, but it would be a bit troublesome if he kept going back and forth to the library to borrow books. He was sure that carrying those books must be heavy, so he promised him to pay him back. Hearing that, Zix said that it was not necessary, but, if he really insisted, Zix then asked him to join the student council with him, although Zix felt that it was a bit inappropriate if he said it, but, after what happened before, Tanya, more precisely, the student council president, began to put her trust in him. He felt like she also wanted to be surrounded by reliable people, therefore he wanted to ask him if he wanted to join the student council. Hearing that, Ed asked if it was okay to randomly recruit members like that. Zix said that they were not random, he explained, because this was the first time in Sylvania's history that a first-year student was elected student council president. She planned to build the strongest cabinet in history. There's the Count Gural's daughter from third year, and the top student of fourth year, Dyke Sr., who had already joined. Soon they also planned to invite the top-ranked student of the first-year magic faculty, Joseph. Then there was the third-year student Anis, who was known as a capable assistant, and the fourth-year student Dorothy, who was the top-ranked student of the alchemy faculty, and even him. The goal seemed to be to gather capable and trustworthy people, but, although Zix had explained at length, but he was sure that Ed would definitely refuse his offer. Ed just kept silent. Hearing that, Zix had no doubt about it at all. He was already quite busy with magic engineering, spirit magic, physical training, camp life, and being an academic scholarship student, plus now that he was also learning new kind magic. He felt that with his current schedule it was difficult, and now there was also a new cabin, so it was not surprising to him, but he was sure that the student council president would be disappointed with it. Hearing Zix's words suddenly made Ed think, even since he saved Tanya, which made the scenario take a turn in an unknown direction. Trying to predict small details felt useless. He also did not expect Zix to join the student council, and the composition of the members is also different from what he expected. Soon there will be a joint combat training. This is the biggest event before Lucy's subjugation, which is the final battle of Act 3. Originally this was the event where Claude, the top-ranked student of the first year of the alchemy faculty, lost the final battle, and ended up drinking the forbidden drug, blood of the fallen god. It was an unpleasant event, so he still remembers it clearly, but unfortunately the scenario is now out of his control, which makes him unable to predict the future storyline. Meanwhile, on a path leading to the Sylvania Academy, a luxurious horse-drawn carriage accompanied by many knights on horseback was seen driving there. The carriage was so large and heavy that it was impossible to move without a mage working all night to enchant it with load reduction magic. The knights escorting it were also so numerous that it almost looked like an army. The residents of the holy city called it a palace on wheels, because of the large resources spent. This carriage rarely left the holy city, and the two figures sitting on the towering carriage were the Archbishop, Verdio, and the Holy Emperor, Eldane. Archbishop Verdio with a warm smile said to him, "It's much farther than I expected. I'm glad we were able to come all this way to check on the Saintess's condition." Hearing that, the Holy Emperor Eldane also agreed with him, "Thanks to you arranging visits to the noble territories nearby. The route fit together perfectly." He also smiled happily knowing that Sylvania Academy was not far away. While Archbishop Verdio and Holy Emperor Eldane were on their way to Sylvania Academy, Tanya, as the student council, must have received the news of their arrival. She wondered if the preparations were done well. She had too many things to do at the moment. She looked very busy and nervous in preparing for their arrival. It was natural because Tanya knew that it was not only the ruler of the holy city of Carpi who was coming, but also Archbishop Verdio, who was his main advisor. She also guessed the purpose of their visit. In the official notice, they said that they came to spread the blessings of the god Telos and administer new baptism. But Tanya knew that it was all just a formality. The student council office was really in a state of chaos at the moment. They were so busy and rushed in preparing for their arrival, and when Tanya flipped through the documents on her desk, she then found the main reason for their visit here. The document that Tanya was holding now was a meeting request form. Tanya was sure that they must be worried about Saintess Clarice. After all, she was like the heart of the church, but when Tanya checked the documents again, she was then surprised to see that there was another meeting request form. She was confused about who the Holy Emperor wanted to meet, and when Tanya read the document, she then found out that the person was a second-year student, Adele Saris. Tanya was quite confused reading that name. She forgot who she was, but Tanya decided to put that aside for now. She then ordered the students there to arrange the schedule so that he could meet with the Saintess Clarice. Hearing that, the students replied that they understood. As for the Saintess herself, today, the Holy Emperor will visit. Thus, for the first time in a long time, she will not be Kylie, but rather stand before the students once again as the real Saintess. While Maya was dressing her, Clarice then called her and asked her, "Today there will be a joint combat training schedule, right?" Maya confirmed it, but unfortunately it coincided with the visit of the Holy Emperor. Clarice also regretted it, even though she was looking forward to interacting with students from each year. To be honest, she didn't want to go back to the Holy City. Life at the academy felt like a dream to her. There were still many people she hadn't met, like a girl who once tended the sacred flame, glazing at the vast, open world, the wandering bard, Adele. She wandered the paths where she was most likely to encounter her second-year seniors. She's someone who appears here and there in a flash. Even here, she's hard to come across. She really wants to meet her as soon as possible. She wants to share the story of the trial she and Tanya faced together, the night when she braved the snowstorm to reach the cabin in the northern forest. Until now, he had always been the listener. But now she finally had a story she could share with her. A lot of things had happened at the academy during her stay. Of course she didn't want to tell Archbishop Verdio everything. The best student at the academy breaking into the dormitory and vandalizing the surrounding area, the former nobleman caught in a murder case. Verdio, who had always taught her the virtues of pure living, would undoubtedly demand that she leave the academy once he heard all that. She always had a hard time resisting Verdio's words. Not because he was a master in mind reading. Mind reading is likely a sacred magic ability, so it doesn't work on her. It's just as simple as him, who she has always regarded as a teacher since she was a child. Noticing her anxiety, Maya then immediately calmed her down. Hearing that, Clarice asked if her anxiety looked that obvious. Clarice also realized at this time that worrying will not solve anything. At least, everything is fine now. As long as she makes sure that no one knows her identity, she can continue to live her academy life. But, when she thought about it, she suddenly remembered something. She now remembered that there was one student who knew her true identity, Ed Roth Taylor, although he seemed like a person who could keep a secret. But, her concern was, what if Verdio and Ed Roth Taylor accidentally met, and if in the worst case, Verdio's mind-reading magic worked, and he realized that Ed knew her identity. Clarice immediately became anxious at the thought. Realizing her anxiety, Maya then worriedly called out to her. She then asked if she wanted her to brew her some tea. With a trembling body, Clarice refused her offer, but she said that she had a request. She asked her to help her prepare for the outing. Maya was then surprised and confused to hear that. She then hesitantly said that they only had a little time. She apologized to her for her impudence and asked her where she really wanted to go. Clarice was silent for a moment hearing that. With a blushing face and hopeful eyes, she then replied, "Ed Roth Taylor, I think I can be calmer if I meet him. I want to meet him, right now, as soon as possible." Maya was then shocked to hear that. Maya didn't know why, but she didn't want Ed and the Saintess to meet, but she could only feel helpless at the moment because she couldn't oppose Clarice's orders and could only agree to her request.